I would think the coroner and the hospital would be responsible for something like that.
I think it would be incumbent upon the police to make sure that they have the identity correct before they notify the parents.
Could be kind of like a chain of people, you know, not only the police, but also the hospital, and, you know, a whole bunch of people could have been involved and, you know, at fault.
I just think it's sad. I know the coroner is really taking the blame right now, and I feel bad for him because it's not just him that was involved. And it was a terrible accident scene. There was like 5 dead on the scene and injured, so it was sad.
Who's to blame for that deadly mix-up of identification out in Michigan? That's the question and the debate that we'll be having in our second half hour of It's Your Call. Right now, though, we're trying to get as many details for you as possible about that case and how it may have unfolded. If you have questions or comments, we are here. We're glad to take your phone calls. It is toll-free from wherever you're watching. Let's take our first call tonight. It comes from V. V, good to have you with us.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good, but I'm like most people across the country. I'm just fascinated by the story. On one hand, my heart goes out to the one family, and on the other, I just want to smile with joy because a family got their daughter back. How about you? How do you feel?
I feel that it's very sad, but number one, it comes to question that I'm thinking, was there any tattoos, anything like a necklace? I know when there's a crash, then you can't really base that off of that. Was there any tattoos? And also, I think it's the coroner's fault because he should have waited. It shouldn't take 5 weeks while the girl was in the hospital. He should have based it off, you know, tattoos or something like that, or teeth graft.
Right.
Yeah, something with the teeth.
Yeah, are you fascinated by that concept that it took 5 weeks for the family and then I guess for the young woman herself to kind of clear this whole thing up?
Yes, it's unimaginable. It's worse.
Can you imagine that poor family who thought their daughter had been recovering and they're nursing her and they're loving her and they're nurturing her, and then they wake up one day and realize, wait a minute, we lost our child. I mean, I just can't even imagine as a mother what that's like.
Yeah, that's sad. I think he should have just waited. He should have waited while the other girl was at the autopsy to determine off a teeth graft who she really was, and then waited till the other girl. They shouldn't have to. The other girl shouldn't have to wake up and say, "Who are you?"
Right.
They should have been known. You know, it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard. You know.
It is. All right, V, thank you. I appreciate your call very much. If you'd like to join in, we are taking your phone calls. It is live from all over the country. Doctor, if you had the opportunity to ask questions of a colleague in that region where this happened, or, you know, there was something on your mind, what would come to the forefront? What would you ask first?
Well, if I were trying to get an idea of what happened here, the first thing I would want to know is what was the basic information that was reported to the coroner's office when the body was brought back to the office, to try to determine whether there was identification on the woman herself. But once you would have her there to do an examination, you want to look, as the caller astutely pointed out, tattoos certainly is one of the pieces of identification if it's distinctive. Clothing, items, and jewelry, less so because people swap them and they're not as distinctive. Then you look for specific, body marks where they might have a well-recognized mole or a birthmark somewhere, scars from some type of previous surgical procedure. But in young people, young college students, a lot of times they don't have any of that stuff. Many of them don't have tattoos. So then you also have to rely on family members to do a viewing. And that would be standard.
Now, if, for example, you had a family member, a daughter or a son, who was in an accident like this, would it be incumbent upon me, let's say, as a mother, to literally remove the hospital sheets and the blankets and look at the body to make sure that it was my child?
That's something, you see that on TV as to show how horrific that would be, and that's not the way it's done. Now, for example, my organization, the National Association of Medical Examiners, we have standards that have been set up to give guidance. But what you try to do is in a very compassionate way, either by taking a photograph, kind of isolating the face. We try to clean it up and make it look as normal as possible.
But I'm even talking about in the hospital. I mean, I think all of us who have watched this story unfold are saying, well, my goodness, if something ever happens to a family member now, I'm going to check and make sure that, this is my child who's being cared for here.
Well, I think in the context, certainly of a multiple victim situation, you definitely want to keep that in mind. I mean, in most instances that we run into in day-to-day life, that's not really going to be much of a problem. But certainly this points out the fact that you know, that's another thing you have to check. If you're not the one who brought them to the hospital, you better make sure that that's your family member.
All right, back to the telephone lines. Caitlin, you are our next call. Do you have a question or a comment for us?
Hi. I'm a senior at Taylor University, and Carly Sierek lives on my floor on First West, and her sister lives on First East. And so I was there the night that everything happened. I was there before she talked to the people to find out that her sister was, before she found out that her sister died. And I guess I just think that one of the problems was that when Carly's friends came back, who, because she lived with two other people in her room,
okay,
they said that she didn't want to see her sister's body, and I think that was the problem, because her father was on a trip, her mom was at home, and so I think because they never looked at the body, that is half the problem about why this whole thing happened.
Oh, see, you just answered a question that I know a lot of people had, like the parents. As a parent, I would want to know and be definitive, but if the father was traveling or the mother was unavailable and it fell to a sister who was, what, 18, 19 years old, I can see where she might be overcome by that kind of responsibility. Mike, that's the question that I posed to you earlier. Now Caitlin has given us some insight into what happened there.
Lynn, if I might point out, I think she points out one of the points I'd like to make is that that may be okay for the first night, the first 24 hours, but after the dust settles and things calm down and everybody gets their feet on the ground, there's still an opportunity to do the proper procedure, which is to try to have a family member, next of kin, or a close friend do a proper identification.
Several people have mentioned the dental records. Is that typically used, or is it only when the body is so badly injured that you might not be able to identify it from a picture or otherwise?
Well, it may not just be in the circumstance where it's badly injured. Dental comparisons, that's standard. You see that particularly in mass plane crashes, where that may be the only way to make an identification. DNA, of course, is available, but these are not like the first-tier routine things that are done.
Okay, we're going to talk more about what is done on a routine basis, but I do want to thank Caitlin for calling. Caitlin, I can only imagine what it's like there at Taylor University.
Yeah, it has been definitely a hard time. Our school has really never had anything like this happen before, as you can probably imagine. So yeah, just please keep all of my friends in your prayers, since this happened to someone that we know.
We certainly will.
Our floor. Yeah.
Thank you so much for calling us and telling us about it.
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks.
All right, thank you. I do have to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll have a debate on who's to blame in this terrible case. Should the coroner's office be held responsible? Did the family have anything to do with it? Should they have known that this was not their daughter? We're going to hear from Danny and Kevin, and of course we invite you to join us on the other side of It's Your Call.
If you missed an episode of It's Your Call, don't worry. If you have digital cable, you can watch Lynn anytime on demand. Just select Get Local from the on-demand menu to watch It's Your Call, anytime, day or night.
The Grant County Coroner's Office would like to once again express our deepest regrets in the tragedy and concede the ordinary procedures did not fit the extraordinary incidents in the chain of events associated with this matter.
Inside of me, it was just boiling over. The joy that I had that she was alive.
These two young women bore very striking similarities in appearance. Their same color hair, same height, same body type.
It's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. It's just, you can't believe it, you know.
People across the country don't believe it. We're asking you tonight, who do you blame for wrongly identifying these young women after the deadly car crash that took one of their lives? Is the coroner at fault, or is it unfair to put blame on any one person due to the severity and the chaos at the accident scenes? Questions that we're posing to you as we begin our second half hour of It's Your Call. I'm Lynn Doyle. Our topic tonight, a deadly mix-up. If you'd like to join in, you can still give us a call. You can also email me, or you can take our web poll. We've been speaking with Michael Jones, who is a reporter for the Gaylord Herald-Times out there in Michigan. He's been following this story. Michael, I did want you just to touch on what it's been like for these families. We're just sitting here imagining the horror from the one family, the Van Ryan family, to realize that their daughter had passed, and the joy that the Sirac family must have experienced when they realized that their daughter was still alive. What can you tell us? What kind of insight can you give us about these two respective families?
One of the words that I've heard over and over since last Wednesday when I talk to people about it is the word bittersweet keeps coming up. There is joy, there's happiness that Whitney is alive. The girls that played soccer with Whitney, the people that were in her youth group, family, friends, they're all happy, obviously. They're all filled with joy, but at the same time to realize that their joy is tempered by the fact that there's another family that is facing the tragic reality that the daughter that they thought was alive, that they thought was coming out of a coma, thought making recovery, had in fact died 5 weeks ago. And I think the people in Gaylord are very cognizant of that fact, that there is another family suffering. And I know everybody in Gaylord, their hearts, their thoughts, their prayers go with the Van Ryan family for what they are going through right now. I know many of the girls that were Whitney's friends went down the day after to see Whitney and met with the Van Ryan family and came back again Sunday for the memorial service. Right. So there is that compassion, I think, between the young people in Gaylord towards the people in Caledonia, which is where the Van Ryans are from.
Not just in Gaylord, all across the country. In fact, people have that bittersweet feeling. Of course, the question that is now going to be moving to the forefront, who's to blame for this mistaken identity case? That's the focus of our web poll here tonight, so let's take a look for the first time at the results. So far, 67% are pointing fingers at the coroner himself, 8% to the deputy coroner, and 25% say it's no one's fault. We want to know what you have to say, so if you want to join in, feel free to tell us what you think. We're also joined here tonight by Dr. Jonathan Briskin, who is a forensic pathologist in the Philadelphia metropolitan area, and now we've invited two lawyers to tell us what they think about this subject. Rhonda Hill-Wilson is a civil trial attorney, and Heather Hansen is a medical malpractice defense attorney. Ladies, we welcome you to the discussion and thank you for your time here tonight.
Thank you for inviting us.
I'm just going to throw it out there to either one of you. Who is to blame for this deadly mix-up?
I have a problem with the word blame, Lynn. I think that there are various parties that may have responsibility for the situation. I think that from the start, there was a series of events that happened, and anyone can look back in hindsight and say that this person's to blame. Someone at the scene, the EMS people who first arrived and put the identification with Laura, the coroner, the people at the hospital, the people at the rehab center. I don't think there's any one person who's to blame.
As a plaintiff's attorney, I'd like to start by saying the real cause of this accident was the truck driver who crossed over the double yellow lines or crossed over the median and struck this vehicle head-on. But when you look at who's responsible for the identity or the mistaken identity, it would seem that the coroner and his officers, as well as the law enforcement officers who are at the scene, have a responsibility to do recovery, to do identification, and to do disposition. And in that responsibility, not blame may be responsibility may be a better way to say it than blame, but it would seem that the coroner, the representatives, had that responsibility.
Rhonda, I think they've accepted that responsibility, but I also think that they followed protocols and procedures for the county. This happened in Grant County, Indiana, where the coroner, I think his name is Ron Mowry, was the coroner there. And he followed the normal policies and procedures. They had an identification from Taylor University, someone who knew the students. In fact, I think that there's a pastor, the dean of students, and another member from the faculty who identified the body. and he followed the normal procedures. The fact that he didn't go above and beyond what the normal procedures are, perhaps the procedures do need to be changed.
It was my understanding that the policies and procedures had not been followed, and for that the coroner admitted that, and that he was sorry for it. And so I think that in the scheme of things, it obviously was